NRI carries a visa and come to US, suppose for example, he has an idea. So now touching upon the point on government support, right? There are certain grants which can be availed. How these NRIs can be, so whether they can go for US government or they can go for, Indian government. So this is a sensitive topic, definitely, but being an NRI, being here, has an idea, how does he approach for the grants? Where can he approach? That's the question always has in my mind. We are in between. We are neither there or here. So definitely, MSR, I wanted to your thoughts on it. NRIs coming here, having ideas, if they want to fund from India, how this process works, or vice versa.
Sure. Now that's a little bit of a hard one, Praveen. So, but I'll try. Right? I'll try. So obviously our obvious focus obviously is largely to support business which get built ground up where we are, right? And that's our intent, essentially to, so obviously, as we all know, right, entrepreneurs play a huge role in economic value addition, creating jobs and all of that. And to the extent possible, we'd obviously like those to be happening where we are, right? I'm assuming, I can see, I think Ali is nodding, so I'm assuming she'll probably echo what I'm saying, right?
I agree, yes.
Yeah. So obviously, and of course, there's also, if we become, for example, if Telangana gets better, obviously India will get better, right? So from that angle, that's how we think about it. But obviously, we also, in terms of, there are a couple of things we do, from a support standpoint. For example, let's say the NRI, for example, wants to come back to India and set up something in India. We do definitely work closely with the government to help them get a soft landing, etc. Help them with the regulatory framework and all of that stuff. But it's fair to say our focus is really more on getting entrepreneurs in Telangana, right, to first start, right, and then to scale.
Absolutely. Thanks. I think that gives at least thoughts to NRIs, and they are comfortable listening this, that you encourage NRIs coming there and for a soft land. So obviously, if anyone reach out to us seeing this program, definitely I will divert to you both, and then you can take it from there. So Ali, you got to say something for especially NRIs here. How do you want to invite them, encourage them?
I think much like MSR mentioned, that's a hard question for me to answer for some of the same reasons. One of Atlanta's Tech Village's goals is to create 10,000 jobs in the Atlanta ecosystem in 10 years. We are almost at 10 years, and we are at right around 9,000 jobs created in the local ecosystem. So for us, a lot of it is trying to create, and to MSR's point, to start and then keep people in the local economy to help create more and more in the local economy and grow our area. But that being said, we support entrepreneurship as a whole, anywhere that people are looking to do it. We have a lot of teams who have national or international headquarters, but they have smaller teams who now live here, especially with the new hybrid workforce. And so we do support that. You don't have to be a founder to be the person who's at Atlanta Tech Village or in our ecosystem. You can be a team member, for example. There's also a fair amount from a government perspective. There's a fair amount of government funding with the SBIR, STTR, and several other of the fill in the acronym. The government does love their acronyms. So there's a lot of non-dilutive capital now becoming available. And it's been interesting to talk to people recently and see how people are bridging the gap between the government and how they talk about capital and startups and what they think of, and how the rest of us think about entrepreneurship, and how do you streamline that process to be able to create a connectivity of somebody who has a really great piece of technology that doesn't necessarily understand how to get it into something that might make a governmental impact. And government doesn't have to mean, for example, military. It could be something where a city needs a piece of technology to be able to support the local infrastructure. So there are a lot of opportunities there that I think that people are just now finding out about. And we partner with several teams that have been both on the government and military side and on the startup side, so they understand how to speak the language of both.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali. insights definitely helps all of the viewers to know more about the government funds. And in the interest of time, I would extend like 10 minutes and ask a few rapid questions to you both. So why don't you give, what is your signature event? Ali and MSR, you can tell what is your the signature event of both of the companies.
Can I pick two?
Yes, please.
I would say that first we have a bi-monthly pitch event. So every 2 months we have Atlanta Startup Village. We have 5 companies. They get 5 minutes to pitch. And then at the end, we have an audience vote, and the crowd favorite from a whole year's worth then compete against each other at a pitch off, and they get free access to the village plus parking for a year. So we do that every other month, and it's been going on for 9 years. So we've had 9 times, 12 months and all of the startups. So we've had a huge impact on that. And then our other large event is called Pitch ATL. Also a pitch competition, but it is a curated list of local startups, not just ones who are members here, but of the Atlanta ecosystem. And we intentionally bring in about 125 investors nationally and internationally, and have the companies pitch to them. It's very high value, it's invitation only, and it's meant to get startups that are in the process of funding that have a really great runway, visibility directly into the investors. So I would say those are probably our 2 flagship, one which allows any entrepreneur to apply and pitch their idea, and one which is a bit more curated.
Awesome. MSR.
Yeah, so on similar lines, so one is we do these we call it pitch days, similar to what I think Ali was talking about, where we curate set of startups, and that's a curated program, so it's not open to everybody. Curate a set of startups which meet a certain criteria, which could be either on the depth of the problem they're solving, revenue traction, kind of customers, kind of team, bunch of parameters we look at, and then we get them in front of investors. And so that's one part, right? And the other one we do is we do an event called Confluence, which is where we bring startups and corporates together. So essentially, for example, let's say we identify startups in a few domains, which could be, for example, healthcare, it could be sustainability, it could be in ed tech, it could be in fintech, and so on, right? And then go out and ask corporates, corporate large companies, to help put together problem statements, right? Listen, we're trying to solve this problem, and is there a good startup out there which is already partially cracked the code, if you will, and then do play the role of a kind of honest matchmaker, which is get the startups in front of the corporates. And typically, the outcome we would like at the end of it is if we can get the startups to actually get to a proof of concept, right, with the corporate, right? Or better still, if the corporate says, listen, I'll fund you, right? So that's what we look for. So those are 2 things which we do. Of course, we do a bunch of things. We have sometimes I actually wonder whether we do a lot of events.
Same.
Great to hear from both of you. And this is the question related to synergy, right, between Atlanta Tech Village and T-Hub. So I'll go with MSR first. MSR, if you were to ask 1, 2 things to Ali for helping T-Hub, what would they be?
Sure. So I think, I'll just start with a very simple, so I have a very simple 6M and 2P framework, which I'll very quickly tell you about. Okay. So, for a business to be successful, it needs 6Ms. Okay. And the 6Ms are access to markets, access to money, access to mentors, access to manpower or talent, motivation and mindset, right? And the 2Ps are partnerships and policy support, right? So we do know, particularly for companies in India, the US is the holy grail, right? Particularly if you are in a B2B business, it's hard for you to build scale unless you figure out a way to crack the US, right? So we'll be happy to work with Ali and figure out if there are exchange programs, right? So, for example, if there's a startup from India which wants to figure out how to get into the US market and use Atlanta as a route, right? Atlanta, as she said, is the fourth largest hub. It is representative. It's large enough, right? And they need to understand, the nuances of operating, a global business. So that's clearly one option we could look at, and it works the other way too. We have startups. We're currently working with startups from Australia, Korea, and Japan, which are now looking to access the India market. So happy to work with Ali on facilitating a two-way exchange.
I love that. Yes, I am in. Let me know how we can send people back and forth and make connections on both sides. Happy to do it. Even if Atlanta Tech Village itself isn't the right fit, we are connected to the other ecosystem hubs. We have several that have even more specialized focuses. And we will be happy to make introductions and connections wherever we need to.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, MSR. And similarly, Ali, if you were to, ask MSR a couple of help from the T-Hub, what would they be?
I think it's actually interesting that MSR, you mentioned that B2B is hard in India. I think the opposite is true in the US, is we do a lot of, especially in Atlanta, we do a lot of B2B. We don't do as much B2C. And so there are a lot of companies that are looking for beta testers. How do we get product market fit and validation? And so I think that it would be really interesting to talk through what would it look like to be able to have some of our companies who are at that stage, who need more access to B2C customers, to see about doing maybe some sort of beta testing exchange with people on your side. That would be lovely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's a conversation we should have, Ali.
I would love that. We can help on both sides. It's mutually beneficial.
That's the whole point of this meeting.
Yes.
Well, Ali and MSR, if you see, I'm not touching on the numbers. I'm not touching about your everything, but I wanted to capture a simple human, if he has an idea, what he has to do, and how Indian startup and also the US startup need to help from the talent perspective, from the investment perspective, from the mentorship perspective, right? So that is the main interest. Being in Atlanta, I wanted to make a sister city, right? You heard about sister city concept between Hyderabad and Atlanta. So definitely, Ali and MSR, I'll be conversating with you more on this to understand and how we can synergize on this. And if I were to ask you the top 5 companies, named renowned companies which are incubated in your hubs, what would be there? Ali, I would like you to go first.
Oh, that are currently incubated or that are graduates, because we are lucky that we have 2 unicorn graduates that started at Atlanta Tech Village. Calendly started here. Tope, the founder, had a hot desk. He didn't even have a full reserve desk. He just had a floating membership. And SalesLoft was also started here. And so between those and our other graduates, we've raised, I don't think it's actually quite as much as MSR's teams raised. I think you mentioned over 4 billion. I think we're somewhere just over 3.5 billion, but we'll work on it. We actually have several very interesting companies in the village now. I would say Prize Picks is an interesting company that's fast growing. They focus on online fantasy sports gambling. And that's new in the US because it's only just now becoming legalized. And so they have a very rapid trajectory. We just graduated a company called AssureSign. We also have quite a few companies that are in the fintech space, and such as Sunday App, which is actually headquartered in the UK, and they help with restaurant payments. We've got a lot. We house just under 1,200 entrepreneurs under our roof, and so it's a wide variety and changes every 30 days, to be honest.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So I think my story is not dissimilar to what Ali said. So we have a number of interesting companies. So, the company which has raised the maximum money is a company called Bizongo, which is into, it's an e-commerce company, and they raised about 187 million or so. Then we have a company called MyGate, which is, we have these gated communities. So basically they do visitor management for them. Then we have an interesting company in the mobility space, basically making electric vehicles, two-wheelers, and actually three-wheelers for transport and cargo. That's a company called Gayam. Then we have companies in the agri-tech space. We have a company called Farmart, which is again, raised about close to 50 million in capital. Yeah, so we have a lot of, and we have now increasingly a number of very interesting healthcare companies. There's a company called Blue Samai, which has built a non-invasive glucometer. Okay, and so as you know, India is probably the diabetes capital of the world. So they're solving both a social problem as well as building a nice business around it. Yeah, so we've got a lot. I mean, I can go on.
It's hard to narrow it down.
That's great to hear. MSR and Ali. And one other thing would be definitely cross exchange of the ideas, right? If any of the idea is successful in India, how that can be translated in US, and similarly vice versa. So we can, in more conversation, we can learn. And last topic I would touch upon would be, if any of the new young entrepreneur comes to you, what are the support from the ecosystem perspective? Can you elaborate to our viewers what you can do if an idea is if idea is pitched to you? How do you translate that idea into an opportunity or a final product, and how much time it takes typically, and what are the steps you follow? High level.
That's a whole other podcast here. That's a big answer, Praveen. It is. How much time it takes is very variable, depending on what the idea is, how experienced the founder is, what connections already exist. Is it greenfield, so it's a brand new idea, or is it in a space that there's already players? There's so much nuance in how quickly something can come to fruition. Not the least of which you think about success stories like, I'm going to use Angry Birds as an example only because it's a game app that somebody put together very rapidly and suddenly became very popular. And that wasn't necessarily marketing, looking for an audience, product market fit, or anything else. Things like MSR mentioned, things with logistics, for example. So Carpool Logistics is one of our fast growing companies. They transfer literally cars from one place to another. And they were working and doing really great. But when the pandemic hit, they suddenly became very popular because people were buying a lot of used cars. That's not something you can anticipate necessarily happening, that a global pandemic is going to cause a car shortage. So there's always, I think, a lot of variables in that. For us specifically, we offer access, again, to ideas, talent, and capital. So when you join the village and you start going to our events, we specifically make introductions and have a strong network to investors, as well as banks. For example, Silicon Valley Bank is one of our partners, and they do a lot of work around creating alternative capital sources. You don't always have to sell a bit of your shares to a VC. And then again, access to our mentors and advisors who are experts in a variety of different areas. Some of them are existing VCs or are enterprise executives. And so they can give you access to the different Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies based in Atlanta, much like MSR's program, where they do corporate matching so that you get into the corporations and they might even buy you.
Awesome. MSR, you want to add anything in this?
No, I think pretty much Ali covered everything. I mean, as I said, both of us can, I'm sure, between us, if you give us a chance, we can talk about this till the end of the day. So, but I kind of try and let me say, I would largely echo what Ali says on this one. And obviously there will be some local variations because we're two different places. But by and large, I think the approach, the philosophy remains the same.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And the final message from you, what are the characteristics for being a good entrepreneur? If you can let the viewers know, we'll close this. And in future, Definitely, we'll have more sessions on funding and whatnot on the entrepreneur startup cycle. I will definitely take your help. So final message from you both to become a good entrepreneur.
MSR, why don't you start?
So first be passionate about what you do. Yeah, I think that's the number one thing. Second, be resilient.
Yes.
Third, be prepared to work very hard. Okay.
Absolutely.
And fourth, be prepared to get lucky.
Yeah. I don't know that I have much to add to that. I was thinking of resilience as really flexibility. Be prepared to pivot on your idea. Don't think that the way that you first thought about it is the way that it has to go. Be prepared to get advice and feedback and market validation and make tweaks and changes and pivot with where you thought you were going to somewhere new. So be open to that. And I would say be ready to wear a lot of hats and learn a lot about a lot of different things, because when you are an entrepreneur, you have to know a little bit about a lot of different pieces. It's running a small business times 100.
Sure.
I think I'll just add one last thing to that. Be humble.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Being humble is very, very important. And I think, thank you so much, MSR and Ali. Definitely this 45 minutes is not enough to give more insights and inputs to all of our viewers. And we will be constantly in touch with you if you have any questions for all our NRIs, anyone who comes up with an idea. I'll definitely facilitate this in future. And that's all to today's shows. Hope the viewers enjoy, and please feel free to reach out to us for any of the questions you have on the startups or entrepreneurship. So MSR, Ali, thank you so much for your valuable time, and have a good night and good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ali. Pleasure talking to you. We'll connect offline. And of course, thank you, Praveen, for having me here. And I really enjoyed it. I didn't realize we'd been talking for almost an hour.
It's a wonderful conversation. Thank you. MSR, is a pleasure to meet you, and I'm excited about partnership opportunities.
Thank you. Look forward.